Well, welcome to the Getting Your PhD While in Industry System Engineering Edition. I'm Larry Mallak, along with
I'm Don Gelosh.
Okay, and together we really provide direction and connection to the program. And in our webinar today, instead of just blasting things at you, we thought we'd convene more of a podcasty conversation and also bring in a special guest in a little bit here. So we obviously have introduced everyone here. And I think the big question is, when Don and I were talking about is, why a PhD? Why do you get a PhD? Don, why did you get a PhD?
Well, it's an interesting story on my part. I had gotten a job at the Air Force Academy. I was in the Air Force, spent 26 years in the Air Force, and I only had a master's degree, and they hired me at the Academy. And then the dean of the department came by and said, "You want to go get your PhD?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I always wanted to get a PhD anyway. I know it's a terminal degree, and I knew that would just open doors for me, if you will. I said, okay, sure. So the academy set me up to go to school at the University of Pittsburgh, full ride, full time.
Hmm.
And my job was to get the PhD. So it's a little bit different than working in industry and trying to get your PhD. But let me tell you, even working full time to get the PhD is challenging. Now I can relate to that because when I was going for my master's degree, I was working full time in the Air Force. So I was constantly taking courses at night, in the evening, somehow, or after work, to get through the master. So that was also challenging. But to me, that I've always told my students and anybody that asks for advice, how do you plan out your career? And I say, go get the degrees, go get training, go get certifications, prepare yourself as best you can, learn the job you have now, learn the jobs of people around you, but prepare yourself for unknown opportunities. Because it's almost impossible to really, reach out 10, 20 years in the future and plan out your career. But the thing is, if you plan out that you're really good at something along the way, you'll start getting opportunities. And I know there's kind of a thing with a PhD. I think that you get a PhD, you have to be a research person. But I disagree with that. I worked in academia. I've done research. I've also worked in industry, not doing research, but doing program management kinds of things, and worked in government doing program management and system engineering, all with the PhD. It actually got my foot in the door. So it was really a good benefit to get that. And I strongly encourage anybody who wants to go do it, go do it. You will open yourself many, many doors in the future.
Good. Yeah, there's a lot of different paths to getting a PhD, and we'll just share a couple of stories before we get into the structure of the program. Don, ask me why I got a PhD.
So Larry, I'm really interested. Why did you get a PhD?
Actually, I was working in industry, a company called Sun Health, now part of Premier Healthcare down in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I was a internal consultant to a network of 250 hospitals, doing everything from nursing studies to physician practice assessments to traditional IE type stuff. And I'd already had my master's degree, and professors at Virginia Tech. So you could come back and get a PhD. I'm like, I got bills to pay. So I think that people can relate to that on this webinar, is that's why you're trying to do it while you're working, right? But I actually went full time then back to Virginia Tech because I ended up being on a lot of consulting assignments, and basically it was like same job, different city. Wake up, where am I? Baton Rouge or Wilson, North Carolina? It was starting to get confusing, and it wasn't really taxing the brain. So I needed a bigger intellectual challenge, and my professors at Virginia Tech were ready to deliver on that promise. So I ended up working with them. And unlike Don, I've actually worked through academic ever since I got the PhD, did the industry stuff beforehand. But between the two of us, we've spent decades working with students who are working full-time and getting advanced degrees, whether it's a master's or a PhD. Fortunately, coming here, I just came here in August, I'm learning about the PhD here and how people are really doing it while working full-time and how it's structured to do that. And that's really exciting. It really gets me going, and it's part of why I'm here. So, and I know we also went our adjunct faculty, Fred Robinson, on, and I know if you've got a 2-minute spiel on why you got a PhD, I'm sure the world would love to hear.
I do have that spiel. So I got my doctorate actually just back in 2018 is when I graduated. I've been at my current company for the last 13 years, so definitely was doing it while working. I got my system engineering master's some 25 years ago, and I had become an effective practitioner, but was sort of stagnant. I'd sort of gotten really good at executing, but was sort of found myself with some sort of, stagnant, and I hit an inflection point when I learned about a doctoral program that I could do while working. The concept was kind of mind-boggling. But the other things were, even when I was in the program, my advisor asked me, well, do you want a doctorate because you want to, as Don mentioned, become a research professor? Do you want to, are you getting a credential so that you can write a book, or are you getting a credential so that maybe you'll get a better promotion at work? And I was like, is that the list? Because it's none of the above. So I didn't want to publish. I didn't want to be a research professor. I enjoy being an adjunct faculty at WPI. And I wasn't trying to move up at work. I'm at a happy level where I am. And she's like, so why do you want a doctorate? I said, well, I want to learn to think better. I want to learn to write better. I want to learn to take more rigor in answering questions and being able to build off of, as they say, on the shoulders of giants, to be built off of existing knowledge, where so much of the information we get from people are opinions. Well, I think this, I think that. But when you can establish with foundation an answer built on the shoulders of giants, built on a body of knowledge, and you're adding to that body of knowledge, but you're able to do it in a work setting, you can continue to make contributions to the body of knowledge without necessarily having to be in academia. And a doctoral degree lets you do that just as much as it lets you do research and other things. So that's my 2-minute answer.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think I clocked in at 2:45, but that's okay.
Oh, I tried.
You were timing that?
No, well, sort of pseudo timing it.
Okay.
Yeah, just having some fun here. But I guess I never said why I went into mine, about 30 seconds. So once I got in, I realized that the teaching and doing research in a more formal way, like Fred talked about, like Don referenced, really was exciting. The ability to do applied work is also very important. Applied research and applied things that have a real beneficial impact to society and companies. So it really depends on what your goals are, and we can help structure things out for you. I think that's a nice segue, Don, into our thing of why WPI and the structure of the program that can help the working professional. So, why WPI? Maybe I'll start with that, and you can address the structure, because we are, one of the few programs in the country that offers a PhD in system engineering, let alone online. Our master's programs are recognized by Forbes list of best online programs in the US. We're number 1 on that list. And if you like a different list, US News and World Report, we're number 23. Number 24 is Stanford. That's where we stand. So, but on the PhD, this is a very flexible program. It is online. It's mostly async. The advising is real time. If you're close, you can come in and meet with us. If your advisor's on campus or you're in the vicinity of your advisor, things like that. So I do want to turn it over to Don to maybe address some of the structure. And I got a few slides handy. Just tell me which ones you want me to put up.
Okay, great. Thanks, Larry. Yeah, let me give you a little bit of history first, if I may. I came to WPI back in 2012, end of January 2012, so that's a long time ago. And all we had was a Master in System Engineering program, which was great program and stuff. I'm looking around figuring like, okay, so where's the intellectual capital of this program? Where do we have the new stuff coming in? Where's the good significant contributions of things? So I talked to some of the powers that be back then, and we decided, why don't we develop a PhD in system engineering? And everybody was like, well, a lot of our master's students are working professionals. How do we do that? How do we get them to come to WPI and do a full-time PhD if they're working? And I'm thinking like, well, don't do it that way. Set it up so that a working professional can take the program. Don't put any time limits on it. Set it up so they can come, work part-time in the PhD and get it while they're still working. So that was the actual the actual beginning, the genesis of the program was developing it for working professionals. And the idea is that there's really no time limits on it. At least not that I know of. Alex, know of any time limits on a PhD? We didn't put anything on there.
I thought it was like 10 years. I think
Oh,
instant
yeah.
like I'm not sure if Sabrina knows better, but I think from what I've heard, 10 years is the limit. But and of course, if there's like but here's the thing, you can put like go for like a pause, like on
Oh,
a
yeah,
leave,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
for any number of reasons, right? If it's medical or paternal or any of the, but in general, like we want to avoid PhDs taking longer than that amount, because there's a number of issues that come into play, like the relevance of the research, obviously the motivation. There's a psychological aspect, also making sure that the committee is still present in order to support the student throughout all that time period, right? So yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Okay. Well,
reasonable.
that
Yeah.
10 years is a long time. And, if you can't get your PhD in that time, I don't know. Because the students we've had working part-time as for a PhD and working full-time as a professional, 5, 6 years maybe to get a PhD. So, you can do it. And we also decided back then that, hey, let's not make them come to campus. Okay, let's get this program remote, online, but offer everybody the opportunity to come to campus if they want. Because anytime you sign up for a WPI program, you are a bona fide student. You get a student ID, you get access to all the student resources on campus and everything. So if you're close by, you can come to campus and and visit with us over there, and use the library and use the rec center and the sports center and everything. But if you're remote, in some place, California, Florida, Illinois, whatever, you can still get your PhD through WPI. We set it up that way. So Larry, if you want to put the one chart up, the kind of like the focus areas and
Yes.
okay.
Got it here. I'll bring it over, or at least I'll share that screen.
Thank you. This is kind of a PhD program at a glance, like it says there. The whole idea, at least in my opinion, I think Larry and Alex would agree, is that to get a PhD, you've really got to make a significant and unique contribution to the state of art of the domains you're in, your system engineering. But to do that, you really need to be prepared to do that. Okay. Even to start working on it, you need to have some initial preparations and stuff. So we require all of our SE PhD candidates to have a master's degree in engineering or computer science, and it's to start off with. And then when they come and talk to us, we start off with, what do you want to do? What kind of research do you want to do? What's your area of interest? And one of the things we like to do, well, a couple of things actually. One thing is we really want the students to have an area of interest that they're really interested in, that they don't mind, burning the midnight oil to work on, and can put in the long hours and really, take the challenges because they're really interested in the outcome of what they're trying to do. Okay, if you're working on a topic that you have any interest in, that right there is almost a no-winner. Okay. The other thing is, if you're working on a topic that your company is interested in, come talk to us. We're definitely looking for sponsorships and partnerships with companies that want to do research and send their students to us to do the research. So two different things there for what kind of research you want to do. But if we have that conversation, then we'll sit down and we'll talk about, okay, what courses do you need to take to get you ready for that? Okay, and we have two focus areas. One focus area 12 credit hours, basically 4 courses. And computer science, mathematics, engineering, but things that really make sense to prepare you for the kind of research that you want to do. Okay. And focus area 2 is kind of a broadening and support area, if you will. Again, 9 credit hours, which is 3 courses in any area, and in consultation with the research advisor. Again, really trying to prep you for doing the research itself. Now you notice that those add up to what, 21 credits, right? So to get 30 credits of courseware, you have to take 3 more courses. but that's basically very wide open. I mean, you could do an independent study, you can do some directed research, different things that you can do to really help prepare yourself to do the actual research. And then research itself is a minimum of 30 credits. Okay, so the total program is 60 credits past the master's. Now, a lot of times you may find yourself taking extra credits because you're not quite done yet. You're still working on the research, and that's fine, you know. And one of the reasons I came to WPI, because when I was looking at the school and, you know, talking to everybody who was here and stuff before I joined up, I realized that they were really a student-focused, student success school. Okay, they are really they're tied into your success as a student, and I really like that about the school. So we keep that same kind of you know, climate culture, we want to say, in the PhD program. We're interested in your success. We have a couple exams along the way, and these are not to, you know, give you a barrier or a fence or some way to stop you from getting a PhD, but just to make sure that you're ready to continue on. You know, a qualifying exam, make sure that your academic preparation has been, you know, sufficient, and identifying shortcomings. We may send you off to do some other research or some other, you know, literature reviews or things. Area exam, which really get down to nitty gritty of what you want to do in your research. Make sure you're ready to go. That's kind of like a proposal, if you will. And then, of course, the defense is on the back end when you're ready to defend your research and prove to us, or the committee, that you made a significant and unique contribution to the field of system engineering. So it really is a nice, well laid out program. Okay. And I always tell all my students that in the beginning, let's talk about how do you know you're done? Okay. I know some schools, you come in as a PhD and you really don't know you're done until the professor's tired of you, okay, or finished with you, and they've wrung you out and they can't get any more out of you, so they'll graduate you because they, you know, don't want to keep looking at you, you know, and that's not what we do. Okay, we sit down and say, when you get to this point and you've done this, we will consider that you have finished and you're ready to graduate. So it's kind of like a contract that we set up with all of our students, so we know that when you're ready to go.
So is that basically in the area exam, Don, which we're calling kind of a proposal? Is that where you basically, when a student presents their proposal to the committee and they pass that, then if they execute along that, they're more than likely going to have a successful defense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the area exam is really, you have to pass that before you can start really doing significant research. Because we don't want you spending a lot of, you know, credits in research going off on a you know, down a rabbit hole somewhere off on a bad path. We want to make sure that you've, you know, got your footing, you got a good path to go on. You know, and research is all about exploration and discovery. Okay, I mean, if like Fred talked about, you know, on the shoulders of giants, that's great. Okay, but you know, do something new and creative, do something that's significant. You know, a nice, unique contribution. And in the area exam, we'll make sure that you're doing that. They're not just doing a project.
That's a really key point.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things, you know, we look for with a PhD student is what's the original contribution you're making to the body of knowledge, particularly in systems engineering and related fields. So that's critical. That differentiates a dissertation, right, Don, from a master's thesis.
All right, master's thesis could be a project.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I worked on a thesis for my master's degree, and basically looking at, you know, security chips inside a Motorola 68,000. So that kind of dates me a little bit, but so that was kind of, but it was a project, and we worked on some, you know, some Motorola 68,000s and tried some things and found out some things, and cool, you know, but it wasn't research.
Yeah, but it can be at that level, but it's a different scope. You're not, you know, you're not breaking huge new ground. You're maybe taking something and twisting it and then applying it and then seeing how it worked, things like that. So, okay. Well, we have a special guest with us today. We figured, you know, maybe just don't want to talk to the professors and directors about what the PhD is like. So we invited Mr. Joe Campagna to join us, and he is a current PhD student. So welcome, Joe, to the program. Glad to have you here. And we'd like you to offer more of a student perspective and maybe roll back through some of the questions we started with was, why did you get a PhD? And you are muted.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Got it.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so why did I do it? So a lot of the, everybody has their own reasons. Going way back for me, I was planning to do my PhD right out of undergrad. I have a double E degree, and life circumstances didn't allow for it. And then I got into a career and started doing more master. I did 2 master's degrees, one with an MBA and one for a master's in engineering. But I've always had that desire to do the PhD for a lot of reasons. So now I'm late career. I spent the last 20 years in a large defense company locally, and then prior to that, I was in the commercial world. So I've always had a big interest in computer-aided design and large systems. I've been working on large satellite systems for the last 20 years. So I did my master's in systems engineering at WPI, and I have a passion for like digital engineering and automation and all the new technologies that are coming out. I've also been a lifelong learner, so it was a natural fit for me, and I'm looking for what's next for me after I retire, and what kind of opportunities done. I liked your thing about opportunities because I tell my kids that the same thing. And you never stop creating opportunities for yourself. Like whatever stage of life you're in, right? I want to know what my opportunities are after I get out of the rat race a little bit, right? So, and I see a PhD as a way to help me with that. I did consulting for a while in my career. I might do some of that. I'd love to do teaching as well. So I think it'll just open up doors for me for, my future and career.
Yeah, that's great insights into why you're seeking the PhD, and maybe you can offer a little bit about being a student in the program. What's that like? What's the experience being a student in this PhD program while working full time?
Yeah, so first let me say WPI program is awesome. I mean, I haven't seen or encountered any other program that has the amount of flexibility that WPI offers for doing a PhD. And I've looked for a lot of years. Like I said, I've had an interest for a long time. So that flexibility is fantastic. What it's been like for me. So I'm not sure how common this is, but when I first got in, I wanted to get my coursework out of the way first. So because I knew I'd be taking a long time to do this. So I spent the first couple of years just getting my coursework out of the way. And then I always knew what my research interests were in. So then I went into I got the qualifying exam out of the way. Then I got into my research topic and really started to formulate that, did my qualifying exam. I'm sorry, the area exam, and then went full bore into my research. So, and that's been really interesting. Plenty of support to do it. No issues there. It's really just comes down, I think, to the passion. If you have that passion and you can tie it to things you're really interested in, I think it's fantastic. So that's been my.
How do you manage your time with all this? Because you got a job, you got this program, you've got a life outside of all that. How do you manage all that?
Yeah. So go slow and steady is what I say. It's like slow and steady will get you there. Just keep plowing through. Allocate some time. Yeah, everybody's got a million things. I got 4 kids, but just you make the time, you set it aside, and you keep plowing forward. You get some setbacks, like trying to get a paper published. Interesting because there's a cycle times there with the publishers that very frustrating. But
it is.
But you kind of work through it. Maybe you look at different journals the next time, that kind of a thing. But you set the time aside, and if it's something you're interested in. For me, I took a topic that also relates to my work. I didn't. The company is aware I'm doing it, but it's because I work in a classified environment. I did it all unclassified, which I think helps. I wouldn't want to intertwine it in with the classified world. I think that would be difficult. So that's how I've been doing it.
I imagine those are going to exist at some point, but yeah, it probably did make your life a little easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So you've been in this program. Where are you in the program? When do you expect to complete?
I finished my research. I'm writing my dissertation. I have a couple chapters written. I have like 3 or 4 more to go. And then
Okay.
I'm planning on defending probably early next year. And then hopefully graduating by May of next year.
Wonderful. What now that you're near the end of this whole process, what sort of lessons learned or recommendations do you have to someone just getting started?
Well, a couple of things, like find a company to pay for it would be great. You're right, number one. That makes it a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, set some time aside, find a topic, that research topic, really just find a topic you're passionate about. I think that does make all the difference in the world. And if you can relate it to what you're doing at work, that makes it more interesting too, because you can talk to people about it at work, get other people excited about it. And then enjoy the process a little bit, like go to conferences and share your knowledge and find other people who are interested in the same things. That's been really great for me. I had stopped going to a lot of conferences because I was later in my career. And then this really got me back into it, and I really enjoy it and starting to meet people again, especially with the same interests and things. So just enjoy the process.
Yeah, that's a great lesson. I like that. Enjoy the process, because if you don't, then why are you doing it, right? So this is a lot of this is intrinsically driven. You're not going to get huge gains out of the PhD necessarily that are monetary, but definitely in terms of work content. I think that's what drove a lot of us into this to begin with is, yeah, as Fred says, it's a journey for sure it is. So enjoy the journey along the way. And a lot of the tasks have become a lot easier than when people like Don and I got PhDs, right? We'd go into the library and actually have to photocopy articles out of journals. Imagine that. Now it's all, online databases, PDFs you read. If you want to print them, you can. But, so that part of it's become a lot easier. And that makes it easier for us with an online program. You don't need to be at the library to do your work, which is sort of the stereotypical PhD student approach. So now it's very flexible. So, and then also that whole point about how do you figure out your research topic, which that's more of an art than a science, kind of. But you got to start thinking about.
It definitely evolves too, right? Like
Yeah.
the first topic you pick won't be the one you end up with. I can guarantee that. Right?
No. It's usually too big, right?
Yeah, right. It's almost always too big, and you got to start whittling it down and really defining it well. One other lesson learned I came out of this whole thing with is, I was always curious what academic research really looked like. And I spent so many years in industry, which trains you to think very differently, I think. So balance it, because industry teaches you to, confidence, ego, right? Exaggeration. You're trying to sell all the time, right? You're selling what you believe in and not necessarily doing the in-depth research because you don't have the time. And then academia says, no, you're contributing to a body of knowledge. You got to spend the time to do this right. People are counting on it, right? And really go through the diligence before you write and talk about it. So it's a different style of writing. It's a different style of thinking. And it's really balanced me, I think, seeing both sides of that. So.
Yeah, I think if you think about, medical research, would you want medical research to be a bunch of people who are very overconfident and selling? Or do you want medical research to be based on clinical trials and what can happen and what are side effects and is the efficacy enough to make it happen? So in system engineering and related fields, we're looking for things that are more like the medical model on that side, whereas we're not going to overclaim what it does. We're going to test and see what it does and then report out what we found. And then, there's always a section,
right? The results, right?
Yeah, the limitations of this work are the following. Future research, because I'm not done. I'm just done here and for now, right? What will that look like? So, yeah, really good points. I want to bring in Fred Robinson. I think he's got a dissertation topic he would like to talk about his path as well. Fred, if you're available to do that.
Come off mute and share. So Yeah, so my journey, obviously different program. I got a Doctor of Science between the years of 2015 and 2018. It was also a program designed for the working professional. But I think one of the things was that I came in with a topic idea. I ended up pivoting twice during my 3-year journey. But then what I settled on is I was focused on the communication challenges in systems engineering. And I found one of the challenges which I had experienced many times over actually had a name, again, through reviewing the literature. It was called the jingle fallacy, when you have a word, term, or phrase, and you think you have shared understanding between two parties, but you don't, which most of all, you call it a misunderstanding. But when that happens over a long period of time on a major acquisition program, as it did in my past experience, you have $220 million on the line, where halfway through, a year and a half into the project, our customer came to us and said, when I was at Lockheed Martin, no, that's not what we want. You've gotten it wrong for a year and a half. And we're like, wait, where were you for the last year and a half? You've been watching everything we've done, gate reviews, all the other systems engineering, yet all of a sudden now it's not what you wanted. So it's called a jingle fallacy. There's actually a shared experience that people have in going through and having jingle fallacies and resolving them, but no one had ever really documented them with respect to system acquisition activities. So that was my topic, was studying the shared experiences of jingle fallacies amongst people doing system acquisition work. And it's just one of those things where once somebody learns the term, they're like, oh, it's got a name. That happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's more of a admitting we have a problem is, that's the first step. And I had to actually convince my advisor that that was really an important thing, was getting system engineering to recognize that that's one of the problems that you don't just get rid of. It's always there. So yeah, it was fun to do the research. I also want to make one comment back on the point about how do you get through a program like that and like this. And one of the things that really is important is having your family on board, having them recognize when it's your study time to leave you alone, but also setting apart time for family, time for a little bit of television. But there are things you give up. Like I stopped watching stupid television shows for 3 years. I figured I'd catch up with them later.
No wonder you're so smart now.
Yeah, really.
And no, I went and I watched all the stupid TV later. But yeah, giving up you do give up something in terms of your time. There's only so many hours in a day and a week, but these kinds of programs are accomplishable, but with the support of your family and as well as the school community to get you through the program. So
those are good points. Yeah, you need a lot of support from all your personal stakeholder groups, right? As well as yourself.
Definitely.
So really key. And I like your point about jingle fallacy. There's a lot of things that come up in our field and related fields that in academics where they name something, whether it's the productivity paradox or the Abilene paradox or jingle fallacy or Murphy's law. That's probably a little more pedestrian, but still there are things out there. Once you identify these things, then you take blame out of it, right? And you start getting to a point where you can address it from a more research standpoint, and you can actually do some work with it, which is really interesting. But you can, again, sell it, right? Because eventually that's what you're doing with your journal articles and conference presentations and consulting is you take this and this becomes something that, oh, what's that? Oh, it's when you do this. Okay. So.
And I'll just add, I was looking in scholar.google.com and I found the first citation from a master's thesis of the article I published off my dissertation. So at least now I have a real citation too.
Okay.
There you go. So I have to ask, who came up with the term jingle fallacy?
So jingle fallacy was coined by Professor Aiken in 1902, although most people who find the research actually refer to Thorndike, who talks about Dr. Aiken in a 1904 article. However, the actual original was 1902. He called it was a set of logic fallacies in a book he wrote, and he was going to call it the reflex fallacy, but he decided jingle fallacy was a better term that people would remember But the point is that we all reflexively go to a meaning based on our knowledge and experience and fields, and assume that other people share those things when we use the same words to describe it. But those words themselves, and it was archivists doing records management talking to IT people who didn't understand what a record meant to an archivist, was very different in my own experience. So yeah, and then there's also a jangle fallacy, which was coined in 1925. I want to say by Klondike, but I'm probably going to get that name wrong because it sounds too much like Thorndike. But it was coined in 1925, and that's when you have two words and you're fighting over which is the right word, even though fundamentally share meaning. So is it a boat? Is it a ship? Who cares? It's a thing that floats, but people like that.
Wait. Ask anybody in the Navy and they'll tell you.
Yep. So they like, but what if you had a boat, a ship that was big enough to carry a boat, but that boat was big enough to carry another boat? Is that boat a boat or a ship? Like, and so
it's a trawler.
That's where you start fighting with jangle fallacies versus.
So where did the term jingle come from, though? I'm not getting my head around that.
It can just because they sound.
We lose
each
Fred?
party.
You want to say that again, Fred? I think you broke up.
Yeah, you dropped out there,
Your
Fred.
brilliant response was frozen in time.
Yeah, there you go.
And I think it still is.
Yes, I froze. Back? No. Okay.
Turn off your video and turn it back on, and I think that usually does it. While you're doing that, let's warm up the crowd a little bit. I know you might have some questions, the guests of ours, the students who joined. Get thinking of what those are, and you can either put them in the chat or we'll give you an opportunity to ask those live in just a moment. But we're gonna come back to Fred now. He's gonna answer Don's question.
Am I working?
You're working.
Yeah,
great.
you're
great.
Okay.
So
jingle.
Jingle comes because it sounds good to both parties. You hear it, it sounds good, it makes sense. Jangle, it bothers you when you hear it. So jingle is you hear that thought, you go right to your meaning, and you're like, oh, that sounds great. And you don't stop to ask the question, well, what do you mean by that? Like the term database was another experience I had where with the archival community, they said, oh, we'll give you our database converter for free. You don't have to go build one or buy one. Was doing text to columns like you have in Excel, but for more rows than the Excel tool could do.
Okay.
Fred's copping out again here. So
he froze again, but he froze at a good point. Thank you for that answer. But yeah, so I put the call out for questions, and I'm not sure if we have any in the chat. I'm gonna check the chat here. Nothing right now, but that's okay because we have some questions out there as well. I think people were looking at, Don, I think a big question is funding, right? How do students go about funding this work? And I know Joe and Fred have addressed it a little bit. So we want to start, and if anyone else has other ideas, that would be great to hear. I'm sure the students want to know.
Well, I think Joe had mentioned, and Fred as well, the best way to get through a PhD program is to get funding from your company. And we understood that way back when. So when we developed the program, we developed for working professionals, so you could be in your company still working, getting those benefits, and the company's paying for your tuition, which is a good way of doing it. Others, if you're military or prior military, there are some military programs. You can get tuition assistance through GI Bill and other things since that, of course. One of the things I think you should avoid is trying to get all the student loans. You can certainly do it, okay, and then you end up with a PhD and thousands of dollars in student loans you got to pay back. And the other way to do it is to enter into a partnership with your company and the school, like with WPI. And Alex is looking at doing some experiential PhD partnerships with companies where they actually sponsor the PhD work, and they send a couple of their employees to us to actually do the work as a PhD student. Then they sponsor it, and then they get the benefit of bringing the research on as their research and collaboration with us, and get the benefits from that. So that's really another great idea doing that. And I think, Alex, that should be a topic for another webinar down the road.
Yep. How to fund your PhD if you're working full time. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because experiential PhD model is a very good one. If you can can, get that working with the company. Because there are a lot of companies out there that will go past the normal reimbursement rates for academic degrees. So that's a really good thing to know.
Yeah.
Right, and if you have a really top-notch professor who understands the area they're interested in, can provide a whole different perspective and new energy to it outside the company. That's also very valuable.
Yeah, so they're getting something out of it that's actually quite expensive, but they normally have to pay a fair amount for anyway.
Right.
So they're getting kind of a pretty good discount on the intellectual property and capital there.
Exactly, and they're also they're obtaining PhD graduates that can
Right.
further their intellectual capital at the company.
Yeah.
So anytime I talk to any C-suite managers, senior managers of companies, I tell them you have money to invest in your intellectual capital, your human capital. That's the best place to put it.
Yep. And I know we saw that when we were at the RTX symposium last week. I mean, there's a lot of interest in the WPI program because of it. That was the master's in particular, with the flexibility and then just the quality of the faculty. And we also have a pretty highly qualified adjunct faculty. So when you take courses with us, you're getting decades of experience for the most part from people who've worked in related industries and applied these things and have studied them. So it's no coincidence that we come up high on the ratings of best programs because of the quality that we deliver, and we deliver in a very flexible way. So speaking of flexible, I know that some of these things are going to run across, hey, there's a residency requirement for a PhD. How do I overcome that? And I know, Don, I think you got the answer, don't you?
Well, we understand that the really purpose of a residency requirement is really to keep you engaged for a certain period of time. And a lot of schools do it that you have to be on campus, taking full-time load for 2 or 3 terms in a row or something. And we do it a little differently. We want you to take something close to full-time, okay, but not exactly, and 2 or 3 terms in a row just to keep you engaged with us. But we found out that the way that we work the PhD program, you're engaged with us from day one. I mean, I've got PhD students who are just taking coursework and stuff, and I talk to them every couple of weeks. We have a meeting. I sit down and talk to them, and some of them are taking coursework and also working on literature reviews. They've got the research that they want to do, so we're engaged. So I think our program really does satisfy any residency requirements we may have because we keep engaged with our students.
Yeah, that's good. It's wonderful for us to be able to do that because it is an online program. I want to switch over to talking about how do you pick a faculty member to work with? Maybe we'll switch back to Joe on that one. And I think it's an interesting question because it's one that a lot of students will face because it's different from doing a master's degree, right? Where you just roll through, take your courses. If you just take doing a professional degree, like our master's in system engineering, yeah, you have a capstone where you don't need faculty advisor for that. So how do you go about picking a research or faculty dissertation advisor? Joe, your thoughts?
Well, when I applied to WPI, I submitted my research ideas. You submitted as part of your application a bunch of concepts for what you're interested in, and then a faculty member reaches out to you. So they reached out to me, my advisor, and then you kind of assess whether you get along or not, and share interests, and whether you want it to work or not, I guess. So it's kind of a mutual come together and say, yeah, this can work. So that was my experience. Yeah.
Yeah, Fred, you want to ring in on that one?
So my program was slightly different. We had a cohort model, and but what they did was actually a sort of a dating process, and they actually had your ideas. You would document. You'd come up with a one-pager. The faculty were all looking at and voting and ranking which ones they were interested in supporting, and then the students ranked faculty, and then they used the model to try to use weighting and things like that to best fit a match to a faculty and student. But one of the things that was interesting was realizing that you don't necessarily have to do research that is in the exact space of what your faculty's research, your advisor's research might be. The point is you're going to become the new expert in whatever it is you go into, and that an advisor is there to help shape your research to be successful. and that they're not supposed to be the expert where you're just coming in and learning what they know. You're coming in and doing something new that was, talked about earlier in the discussion. You're coming up with something impactful to add to the body of knowledge. And so they're going to help you do that.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I spoke with a fellow PhD students last couple of weeks, and it's kind of exciting to hear their thoughts about what they're thinking of doing. And though it doesn't feel, they don't fit directly in my wheelhouse, but something that's kind of like, wow, you could do that. I don't want to spill their story, but like, this is an amazing idea. I think if we bring this faculty member in, this faculty member, and you'll have quite a support system in place to really do what you want to do and have the platform on which to build this research. So it's exciting to talk to some of these aspiring PhD students about what their goals are and how they want to fit into the system engineering field. So if you're thinking that, whether you're on the webinar today, whether you're viewing it after it's been recorded, we'd love to talk to you. Reach out to any of us, multiple ones. Multiple conversations is a good way to start figuring out your idea and getting the questions that the faculty member will ask back of you to get you to think critically about what is it, the thing you want to study, and how do you want to study it. So that's a really good insight, both from you, Fred and Joe. So I think of other common questions people might have, related to a PhD program, because it is a large undertaking. How do you go about writing something so long? I mean, I think that's one of the daunting tasks a lot of people would face, right? When, it's 100, 200 pages long. Joe, how do you go through that? How do you make that happen?
Yeah, for me, it wasn't so much about length. I can be a prolific writer. It's about style, right? So how do you have to learn the academic style of writing, which is different and unique. And that was my biggest challenge is taking out a lot of fluffy adjectives, right? And a lot of my opinions that weren't backed up with data, things like that. So like I said, in the business world, you're kind of encouraged to do those things. And in the academic world, you have to kind of strip them out of your thinking and go with, okay, this is solid research based on factual evidence, right? Or proving theories or hypotheses. Yeah. So yeah. But the length was never so much an issue, I think.
Yeah, that was always one early piece of advice I got from one of those coaches was just write for 30 minutes a couple times a week. Just write. Yeah. People don't do that, like, especially after you get your PhD. If you just do that, you'll have this huge amount of content to work from. But people, like, they block out a whole day. They say, I'm going to do research, right? And then they go get a cup of coffee. They read something, and oh, it's time to take the dog for a walk. And by the time 5 or 6 o'clock rolls around, they haven't got anything done. So if you take a real concentrated thing, turn off the email, turn your phone off, focus, right? Because we live in a much more distracted age than we did when some of us got our PhDs. So
yeah, and I'll just add to that and say be organized, because you're gonna want to find stuff you wrote a year ago, 2 years ago. And if you can't find it, it's very frustrating. So you got to be very organized.
Yeah, you need whatever tool you want to use. Yeah, get familiar with it now. Fred, I think you got a comment. We have some time for a little bit of closing comments here, Fred.
Well, I was going to say, start with the reference manager early. In fact, I just opened up my Zotero that I use to find a document article I used back, 7, 8 years ago to share with a colleague. And the other thing was an piece of advice from my advisor, which was to actually develop an object-oriented approach to the content of my dissertation and not try to write this highly interweaved, everything ties to everything, but keep things enough loose coupling, but still have the tight logic between them, but the loose coupling. And in the end, I actually ended up reorganizing my dissertation in Word, but I copy pasted. And because I leveraged the Word functions the right way, it took me 5 minutes to see. It's like, move this here and that there. I went, and I was done. Like, I didn't have to massively rewrite anything because I had kept things within compartmentalized sections to create the content.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Know your Word or whatever tool you're using really well. I'm gonna turn it over to Don. Any closing comments?
Well, just a couple of things. Joe reminded me of the old apology that hey, I'm sorry for writing such a long letter. I didn't have time to write a short one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, is exactly that. And the other thing too is that just the fact that you think and your advisor thinks your research is really good doesn't mean anybody else agrees with you. And I've run into that. And you really have to have and that's where literature review comes into play. You know, you've got to have other people out there saying that, yeah, this research needs to be done because it's important. We haven't done this yet because, you know, we still need to do something else, but it's important to do that. Once you get that kind of support from the field, and we also encourage our students to write papers for conferences and journals and things. And we like to see the reviews of those papers and journals. Okay, see what the field says. You know, and it gives us more, I don't know you call it warm fuzzies or whatever, more confidence that the research you're doing actually is important to some people out there in the community.
Yeah. So in closing here, especially those who are early in their thoughts about PhD, start writing down questions. What questions do you have about certain things in a certain disciplines, how things work? What are some problems that occur out there, especially more conceptual and complex problems? And don't worry about solutions. That's down the road. Start asking those questions. As you start doing that, reach out to us, reach out to Don, reach out to me, reach out to other faculty members, Dr. Bada, Dr. Monat. We're all here to help you and you know, make your application. We'd love to see more your application to our program. So if you're interested and there's a match and you're qualified, let's get it going because now's the time. So I want to thank everybody for being on the webinar tonight, and thank you for your time. All our special guests, Joe and Fred, a surprise guest, and of course my great colleague Don Gelosh, Alex, and Sabrina. Thanks for being with us today. Take care.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it.
Thank you.